The genius of the Stone Temple Pilots, thank you guys for joining me. 7 Caged Tigers off Tiny Music. We are essentially and loosely in the key of E major. We're starting off for the intro on the 3 chord, but not of E major. We're doing a lot of modal mixture. You could call it modal mixture, you could call it modal interchange if you want. It's kind of the same thing. You could also say that some of these chords are chromatic mediants, which is essentially where you take the letter and you switch it to either like going from an E flat to an E, or going from like an E major to an E minor, whatever it happens to be. But as you can see from the chords used as we go forward here, we're definitely rooted in E major, but some of the chords are coming from E minor, which is the parallel minor of E major, which is essentially the modal interchange idea. So we're starting off on the 3 chord G, which is the 3 chord in E minor. We're moving up to B minor, which is the 5 chord in E minor, and then we're ending that little section on an E major, which is the resolution point. And then, but we're going to keep going here. We're going to throw in a D major, which comes from the key of E minor. It's the 7 chord. And then we're going down by a whole step to C major, which is the 6 chord in E minor. And then we're going to end this progression with a B7, which is the 5 chord in E major. So essentially borrowing chords from E minor while having most of this tonality cemented in E major because of that 1 chord being E major. So the next section, the verse, essentially does an E major, again, as the 1 chord, D as the 7 in E minor, C as the 6 in E minor, G as the 3 in E minor, and then B minor as the 5 in E minor, and then again resolving back to the E major. So a lot of E minor, but coming back home on that tonic on the E major. There's also a B7 involved in this section, and then it finally ends on E major. Let's just give you a little bit of audio of that section. So here's the E major, D major, C major, and then of course the B7. So all in all, what I like about this is that we're basically using chords of E minor, but our tonic chord is E major, which gives it a much more powerful, much more uplifting feel. The chorus shifts, and this is one of Stone Temple's, they did this in another song, and my memory is not there for this, but they shift to E flat for this. And so we're only dropping by a half step, but that half step is enough of a change to make the ear go, what was that? So here it is. Let's finish out this section. We're in E still. There you go. Right there's the switch to E flat. And so essentially what we're doing there is we're going E flat to F, which would essentially be like the 1 chord to the 2 chord in E flat major. And then they also throw in a B minor toward the end of that. The B minor doesn't really belong to the key of E flat, because the key of E flat major and E flat minor would have a B flat as the 5 chord. So we're kind of borrowing that from the original E minor. So just more modal mixture, modal interchange. The next verse is more of the same. It's just like the beginning. The next chorus is more of the same. The bridge solo section, I'd like to say it's different. They do throw in an A, which I'll look at as being the 4 chord in E major, and then they do have an F sharp major, which is like the altered 2 chord in E major, because it should be minor. And then there's just more of the same. So unfortunately, that's it. but I do find this song to be rather interesting. Sonically and obviously on paper, toggling between E major and E minor and then dropping down a half step for that chorus is just great. Love Stone Temple Pilots. I love what they do. I wish they were still around in their original state. Unfortunately, Scott isn't with us anymore, but we have the memories, right? So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.